Bonnie Lipton smiled as she drove her BMW onto the highway in Atlanta. She knew that she would arrive home a couple of hours later than planned, but she would simply chalk it up to the famous Atlanta traffic jams. Nick made the delay in leaving worth the lost time. He is almost 10 years younger than Bonnie and an excellent lover. He is handsome, smart, an excellent conversationalist, and also young enough to quickly recuperate. Bonnie's thoughts then turned to her husband, Ron. He had just turned 44 and lacked Nick's stamina. To make their sex life very enjoyable, he relies on his experience and knowledge of Bonnie's body. After sex with Nick, it was always nice to come home and fall asleep in Ron's arms. She realized she had the best of both worlds, and her smile grew even wider. The further she drove from Atlanta, the less she thought about Nick. He's fun to be around, but Ron and her daughter Casey are the ones she loves. Bonnie wanted to spend time with them now that her libido was fully satisfied. She understood her moods. When she returned home, she would be patient and loving with Ron. He is a wonderful person and an exceptional husband. Casey was athletic and smart. She had many friends in sports and school activities. It's not unusual for 2 or 3 of her girlfriends to hang out at the house on weekends. Bonnie enjoyed being with young women, and they seemed to look up to her as a role model. Bonnie made sure to always be well-dressed. She held an excellent position in an architectural firm and was respected in the community. She and Ron were well known both individually and as a couple. Ron now runs his family's successful construction company. He was never so busy that he didn't go to all of Casey's events at school. Bonnie always enjoyed sitting next to Ron while they watched their daughter play or perform. She knew that more than a few other fathers liked to sneak glances at her, but she also noticed that many of the mothers looked at Ron as if they were vultures and he was prey in the road. Even when Bonnie sat next to him, women often found time to chat and flirt with him. Her handsome husband never seemed to notice, but to Bonnie it was all very noticeable. After several hours on the road, Bonnie pulled into her garage and discovered that her husband's pickup truck was missing. It was unusual and unexpected. Bonnie felt her mood begin to change. The least her husband could do was be home to meet her after a grueling business conference and a long drive home. The house was empty as Bonnie walked into the master bedroom. She couldn't figure out what caused it, but deep within her was a sickening feeling. It was almost lunchtime, and no one was home. The next day is Thursday, which means Ron has work and Casey has school. This meant they had to be home soon, so Bonnie unpacked before taking a shower. While she was thinking about Ron and Casey's unexplained absence, Bonnie remembered that her phone was off. It had been turned off since dinner the previous evening. On the way home, she was lost in thought and didn't think about why no one was calling her. Ron might have been angry because she never called to thank him for the string of pearls. The previous evening, when Nick had stoked her fire, she had completely forgotten about him. Drying her hair with a towel, she turned on the phone. Ron congratulated himself once again on having succeeded in executing a simple but brilliant plan to please and surprise his wife. He had known about her planned conference in Atlanta for months. Bonnie visited them twice a year. As fate would have it, this conference fell on his 20th wedding anniversary. A few weeks earlier, Ron had been approached about building a large vacation home for a family in Atlanta. Once the business portion of the meeting was completed, and Ron felt comfortable with the client, Boyd Drake, he expressed an idea that had only recently formed in his head. Boyd, on the 10th of next month, our anniversary, my wife will be attending a conference in downtown Atlanta. I would like to surprise her and her colleague with a nice dinner at a nice restaurant somewhere near her hotel. To top it off, I bought a pearl necklace that I would like to present to her at the table when she eats dinner. My daughter should organize this for you, Boyd said. She's in college now and knows all the good places in the city. She could see to it that the necklace ends up in your wife's hands. It sounds like you're planning on being lucky when your wife comes home. Why don't you just go to Atlanta with her and deliver it yourself? I've proposed in the past, but Bonnie insists she's too busy to spend time with me. She will have a late dinner and return to the hotel as soon as possible to rest the next day. I have obligations here, and to travel this far only to be ignored seems a little stupid, Ron reasoned. I have another idea, Ron added. Suppose I buy your daughter and her friend dinner if she agrees to sit at the table next to Bonnie and send me a live video on Facebook? I'd love to see Bonnie's surprised look when she opens the necklace box. I'll give you my daughter's number and you can call or text her and arrange everything, Boyd replied. I'm sure she'll be happy to help get this done. Ron had several pizzas delivered to his home for a party he was throwing to celebrate his 20th anniversary. He invited his parents, Bonnie's parents, his brother and sister-in-law, and Bonnie's younger divorced sister. They all expected to see Bonnie in real time when he surprised her with an anniversary gift. Ron's 16-year-old daughter, Casey, was also there with several of her friends. Ron had everything set up so they could watch the video on the big screen TV. Boyd's daughter will sit as close to Bonnie as she can without arousing her suspicions. She will send videos to me via Facebook Live. She paid the waiter to deliver the wrapped gift after Bonnie and her co-worker Sue ordered food. We'll see Bonnie's reaction in real time. This will be the best anniversary ever, considering we are so far apart, Ron explained with a happy smile. I set everything up so that no sound will be transmitted from our side, so feel free to make comments, including what a great idea I had. Who is this guy with his mother? Casey asked as Bonnie came into view, holding hands with a handsome young man. Didn't you say she would be with Sue? I don't know who he is, Ron admitted. He seems to be a pretty close friend. Bonnie's father simply made a harumph sound and frowned at Ron's statement. As the couple took their seats, everyone gathered around Ron's TV could easily hear the conversation. It's very nice that your husband paid for our dinner this evening, the unknown man remarked with a grin. I will do my best to make this anniversary unforgettable, at least for you. It will be even better than your honeymoon. Then you better order a steak, Bonnie replied with a grin. You will need strength. My honeymoon was epic. Is it true? The man asked. Did you have a lover then, or did your husband actually manage to ring the chimes? Ron did a great job, thanks for asking, Bonnie replied. You're the only lover I've had in the last 20 years, not counting Ron, of course. Luckily for me, he started to slow down, the man replied with a grin. The good news is this, you'll have a much better 20th anniversary tonight than most women. I'll take care of it. Maybe we've seen enough, Sister Bonnie suggested nervously. This is not entirely fair. Bonnie has no idea what we're watching or listening to. Why don't you turn it off, Ron? We don't want to miss Bonnie's reaction when she receives her necklace, do we? Asked a determined but very red-faced Ron. Let's watch this train wreck for a little while longer. While the couple was ordering, everyone heard Bonnie call her companion Nick. As the waiter left with the menu, another waiter appeared with a nicely wrapped package. Look! Ron must have delivered me a wedding anniversary gift, Bonnie exclaimed in delight, tearing open the packaging. Isn't she beautiful? Bonnie asked, looking at the string of pearls. Could you fasten it on me? Certainly. Just lean towards me, Nick said, carefully fastening the necklace. Having completed his task, he quickly ran his hands over Bonnie's chest. Your husband is so romantic. You're lucky to have such a handsome man, remarked an elderly woman sitting at the next table. True on both counts, Nick agreed with a smile. She has a romantic husband and a handsome boyfriend. Bonnie glared at Nick, but the older woman simply laughed at his comment. I gave you a pearl necklace last night, which I think looks much better on you than this, Nick joked, leaning down and kissing Bonnie on the lips. That's the difference between a husband and a lover, Bonnie said with a sexy grin. Husbands give us jewelry and lovers give us climaxes. Sorry, but I can't do it anymore, the beautiful red-haired girl who must have been Boyd's daughter whispered as she turned her phone. I should have stopped earlier, but I was so stunned that I went into shock. I'm so sorry it turned out this way. I will definitely erase everything from my phone. I have to go. The TV turned off and everyone sat in stunned silence. One of Casey's friends was the first to speak. It's already late. We'd better leave. See you tomorrow at school. If I even go, Casey replied with tears in her eyes. Dad, is it okay if I go home to my friends? I feel like I need to be with them now. Of course, honey. I understand. We'll talk tomorrow. Drive carefully, girls. Ron had to practically whisper. His throat was so dry. I don't know what to say, Bonnie's mother began. I think we got the wrong impression about what was happening. Bonnie loves you, Ron, and is ready to give her life for Casey. Don't do anything rash. Ron's other guests mostly repeated these words as they quietly discussed the situation. After a few more minutes of calm discussion, Ron made his decision. I have something to think about. Everything. Please find a way out yourself and give me some time to be alone and think about my options. When everyone had left, Ron took out his suitcase and began to pack his things. Bonnie was surprised by the number of messages she'd received and calls she'd missed since she'd turned off her phone the previous evening. As she looked through the messages, her heart sank. Her sister and mother demanded to know who Nick was and why she was so friendly with him. They insisted that she had broken Ron's heart, and Casey was also very upset. Her mother and sister sent her at least a dozen messages each. Bonnie checked her messages to see if she had anything from Ron and found that she didn't. How did her family find out about Nick, and how much do they really know? Where are Ron and Casey? How can she get out of the hole she finds herself in? She needed to find out what exactly Ron knew, and also what he simply suspected. Bonnie realized she needed to talk to family members to understand how bad her situation was. Mother, it's me. I forgot I turned off my phone last night, Bonnie began as calmly as she could. I see you tried to call me. Is there anything wrong? Only if you think the loss of your husband, the alienation and embarrassment of your daughter, the disgrace of your parents, and the behavior of an inveterate slut can be considered wrong. I'm guessing it doesn't bother you too much. Otherwise, you wouldn't be enjoying a damn pearl necklace from your boyfriend, her mother ranted. Ron gave me a string of pearls for our anniversary, Bonnie countered. Why should this upset you? Your father and I have seen enough old adult films to understand what your boyfriend meant when he said you were wearing his pearl necklace, Bonnie's not-so-straightforward mother said. Mother, what makes you think I would do something like that? Why do you think I have a boyfriend? Bonnie asked, as fear tied a knot in her gut. Don't play games with me, I am not stupid, her mother growled. Ron invited us to watch you open his 20th anniversary present at the restaurant. He booked a table for you and your colleague. I think her name was Sue. We have seen this whole vile story. Your husband treats you like a queen and you don't respect him. Husbands give jewelry and lovers give climaxes, I think you said. Did you hear me say that? Asked a shocked Bonnie. How is this possible? Ron asked some friend's daughter to do some sort of live broadcast from her phone. He wanted us to see how happy you would be with his gift. Then we were all going to call and congratulate you on your anniversary, the mother said sadly. Looks like this might be your last anniversary, at least with Ron. Maybe you'll meet your favorite boy again when things calm down. Mother, you know I love Ron. That other guy means nothing to me. It was just something to pass the time. These conferences are getting boring, Bonnie insisted. Oh, this changes everything, her mother said sarcastically. Ron will feel much better knowing that his wife is not a slut and that she was just bored. I assume you left your puzzle at home. Mom, there's no use calling me names. How can I convince Ron that he is the only man I love? You didn't even convince me, so I'd say you have some work to do, the mother replied. Watching you with that man is the worst thing I've ever seen. I highly doubt Ron found it better. After talking with her mother, Bonnie thought about her situation. Her entire family had seen and heard everything she and Nick had discussed at dinner the night before. Remembering her conversation with Nick, Bonnie realized how bad her situation was. She decided to call Casey. Casey, where are you? Bonnie asked when Casey answered her call. I'm with Morgan. She's trying to console me because my family has broken up, Bonnie's daughter replied. We are not breaking up. Please come home and we can talk about this. Where is your father? Bonnie asked, uncertainty. He moved to a cottage on the lake, Casey answered. I don't think he wants to see you. He was so happy last night when he invited everyone to watch you open your gift. You practically tore his heart out when you showed up with your lover instead of Sue. Please come home, Bonnie repeated, trying to think of what she could say to Ron to get his forgiveness. After finishing her conversation with Casey, Bonnie began to look around the house. She noticed that a laptop and several filing cabinets were missing from Ron's office. The closet in his bedroom was completely empty. It was as empty as Hubbard's mother's closet. Bonnie fought back tears as she wandered aimlessly around the house, noting what items were missing. Ron didn't take a single photograph of her presence. This fact seemed especially depressing. Looking for something to take her mind off her crumbling marriage, Bonnie began cooking dinner for Casey. By the time Casey walked through the door, she had managed to prepare a small meal. Casey was sullen and only spoke to Bonnie when asked a direct question. Even then, Casey kept her answers as short as possible. Bonnie admitted to herself that her daughter had good reasons to be angry with her, but she hoped that over time the hostility would, if not completely disappear, at least lessen. The next morning, at dawn, Bonnie walked into their lake house to find Ron slumped uncomfortably and passed out on the small couch. Numerous empty beer cans were strewn across the floor. Ron? Honey, we need to talk. Wake up, please. Ron slowly opened his eyes and groaned. He gradually stood up and, without saying a word, headed to the bathroom. Bonnie decided to make some coffee while she waited for her husband to return. A few minutes later, Ron, fresh from his shower, returned to the kitchen and Bonnie placed a mug in front of him. Bonnie hoped that Ron would initiate the difficult conversation, but that hope soon faded. It was obvious that Ron had no intention of starting a conversation. Ron, I'm sorry this happened. I love pearls. It was a wonderful gift that I will always cherish. It's a pity that I didn't know that you would pass everything on to your family. It would be great if you told me about this. Fuck you, was all Ron could answer, as he was infuriated by Bonnie's attempt to make him out to be the abuser. Bonnie was surprised and hurt by Ron's answer. In all their years of marriage, he had never spoken to her in a disrespectful manner. This was clear evidence of the pain she had caused him. That won't help, Bonnie answered calmly. Tell me, what should I do to fix everything? You are the only man I have ever loved. That hasn't changed. Together we can deal with this. Tell me, what problem exactly do you want to solve? Ron asked calmly. The problem is that I surprised you with an anniversary gift in a nice restaurant where I booked a table for you and a friend. The problem is that my client's daughter agreed to send a video of your reaction in real time. The problem is that I mistakenly decided that you would appreciate this gift. Explain to me what the problem is so that I understand what you are talking about. You know what the problem is? Bonnie insisted. Last night you saw me and Nick in the restaurant. I know that you have dinner with others from time to time. Why do you think that's the problem? Ron asked. You know perfectly well why this is a problem. I told you I was going to dinner with Sue, but I actually went with Nick. You overheard our conversation and found out that we slept together. This is the problem we need to work on. Just to be clear, is the problem that I, along with your entire family, overheard your conversation, or is the problem that you had sex with another man? The problem is my behavior, admitted a blushing Bonnie, realizing that in her current situation, it would not be possible to go on the offensive. You were just trying to be nice to me on our anniversary. You didn't do anything wrong. Okay, we're making progress. Now tell me why you cheated on me behind my back, for how long, and with how many men it happened. Ron demanded. Is Casey my biological daughter? Is there any chance that her father was the postman? There's no need to be vulgar or offensive, said an emotionally stunted Bonnie. Of course, Casey is your daughter. Nick has been my only lover since we started dating. Your comment about how many men I've had and Casey's father being a mailman was just cruel. I'm having a hard time understanding your logic, Ron countered. You admit that you are a cheating slut, but you insist that there be a line drawn as to how big of a slut you are. You want me to be polite and understanding, not to mention gullible, when you tell me that you're one man's slut. Are you proud that you haven't cheated on me that often? By the way, How long have you been sleeping with Pretty Nick and how often? You forgot to mention these important facts when you began to refuse the title of city slut. This was the third conference we've slept together at, Bonnie admitted with tears in her eyes as she finally began to feel the depth of Ron's anger and humiliation. Besides you, he is the only man I've been with since we got married 20 years ago. It will be 2 nights together at each of the 3 conferences, said Ron. Have you ever had sex with him anywhere else? No, Bonnie stated. This happened a total of 6 times and I deeply regret it. I owe you an apology. Are you saying that a young stud like Nick was only capable of 1 time a night with a beauty like you? Asked Ron. He never had you more than once a night? Who cares? Asked a discouraged Bonnie. We probably did it 3 times every night. Now for the big question, Ron announced. Why did you have sex with another man? Was sex with me so thankless, so mundane, so pathetic, that you needed to find a younger, more satisfying lover? Of course not. I was bored, and he pursued me tirelessly. I turned out to be weak. It's not about you or our sex life. It's my vanity, maybe a midlife crisis. He doesn't mean anything to me. I swear. It's clear. You had sex with a man who meant nothing to you, Ron repeated. Did you have sex with Mr. Jenkins? The guy who lives down the street and wears those ridiculous shirts? Asked a very confused Bonnie. Of course not. I barely know him, but I find him repulsive. So he means nothing to you? Ron continued. You just told me that you sleep with men you don't love and who mean nothing to you. Jenkins fits that description. So why don't you have sex with him? I didn't say that I sleep with every man who means nothing to me, Bonnie explained, upset. I slept with Nick because he is handsome, courteous, and successful. He was following me. Do you want to say that you will only cheat on me with handsome, successful men who run after you? Apart from a few of these guys, are you a faithful wife? If you don't love the men you have sex with, doesn't that mean you don't love me? No. I'm telling you that I made a terrible mistake and it will never happen again, Bonnie said with feeling. I love you, but not Nick. How do I know this? Ron asked quietly. At our wedding and several other times over the years, you promised to be faithful to me. You are a beautiful woman. Handsome, successful men will always pursue you. I can't trust you. I can't even give you the great sex you love so much. Don't ever think like that, Ron. I love sex with you. He's special and makes me feel loved, Bonnie replied. How did Nick make you feel that you kept coming back to him? Ron asked softly. Dirty, used, not like a mother or wife. It was the wrongness that got me hooked, not love. What did you do with him and how? Asked the quiet Ron. What does it matter? I love only you, Bonnie protested, clearly embarrassed. I have something to think about. You stand here and tell me that you love me, not him, but you had dirty sex with him. It's hard for me to accept that you are willing to do much more for a person who means nothing to you than for the person you love, Ron reasoned. You haven't told me to please your manhood below the belt for a long time. I wasn't so much against it as I thought you'd lost interest, Bonnie protested, even realizing how pitiful her words sounded. Yes, what kind of married guy would want to get this from his wife, especially when she gives it out like candy? You told me on our honeymoon that I would be the only man you loved, Ron recalls. You and Cute must have had a lot of fun with me. Everything was wrong. He never talked about you. I would never allow that, Bonnie insisted. You seem to have forgotten that I heard several minutes of your conversation. This asshole insulted me several times and you went along with it. Remember how I slow down? That he will give you a better 20th anniversary than most wives. You didn't object, did you? Why are we even wasting time here? Ron suddenly demanded. You found someone new. I accept it. It looks like you should too. Why pretend that you want to stay married? It's obvious that you didn't enjoy being my wife. And let's not even talk about bad sex. You are beautiful, successful, and smart, and I bring nothing to the table. It was only a matter of time before you started looking for something better. Congratulations, you found it. Don't let the door hit you in the ass on the way out. Ron, We can't let this discussion end this badly. We have to discuss everything and find a way back, Bonnie tearfully begged. You can ask your lawyer to talk to my lawyer. It's over between us, Bonnie. I'm going to divorce you. You left me no choice. That day, Bonnie went to work, but was found in the break room by an angry Sue. Why did Ron ask me about going with you to Atlanta for a conference? You know very well that I stopped riding them after you decided to spend your nights with Romeo from the Chicago office. I don't want you to use me as a cover for your infidelity. Did Ron call you? And what did you tell him? Bonnie asked dejectedly. The truth. I didn't go to the last two conferences. I was under the impression that you told him that we were going to share a room and spend time at the conference together, Sue complained. I don't like being used like that. That won't be a problem anymore. Ron learned everything on this trip. I think he's going to divorce me, Bonnie admitted. What other outcome could you expect? Sue demanded. No decent man could accept this level of disrespect. I was too damn stupid and self-centered to even think about Ron finding out about this, Bonnie answered frankly. He moved out. Don't you think you made a choice when you slept with that nasty bastard from Chicago? Sue asked a little softer. I'm sorry you lost Ron, but I warned you that this would happen if you continued like this. It wasn't me who told him, if that's what you're thinking. I know, Sue. I owe you an apology. I abused your friendship. I'm sorry I didn't listen to you. I don't deserve a man like Ron. After finding out that Bonnie was cheating on him, Ron took the day off from work. He was determined to move all his belongings to the lake house before Bonnie returned home. He didn't want to listen to her reasons and excuses for cheating. He hated the thought of life without Bonnie, but he knew he could never forgive her callous disregard for his feelings, nor her ambivalence about loyalty and respect. Her unexpected visit the next morning simply revealed a huge emotional chasm dividing them. She didn't say anything that could help him forgive her betrayal. He made an appointment with a lawyer for the next day. The next day, he was preparing to leave the office for a meeting with a divorce lawyer when he received a new email. It was from Bonnie. He wondered if he should read it or just delete it. After internal discussion, he opened the letter. In her typical fashion, Bonnie tackled the problem head-on. He felt nothing but despair when he read her message. Ron, I know I really screwed up this time. I was so stupid that I thought you would never know and my actions would never hurt you. I was wrong. Lying and cheating destroy marriages, even if one partner doesn't know it's happening. You deserve so much more. I have never wanted anything in my life as much as I want you to forgive me, but I will not challenge any of your actions regarding our marriage. I have lost my right to participate in your decisions. I love you and wish you all the best. You are a wonderful man, husband, and father. This is all entirely on my conscience. I accept this truth, although I feel bad that I did this to us. You may not believe it, but I love you and always will. Bonnie. Ron fought back tears as he read Bonnie's confession and her plea for forgiveness. It was like her to accept blame for her actions when she had time to think about the situation. She was a strong woman requiring the best from both others and yourself. He felt empty and saw no reason to answer the letter. He had nothing more to say. After that morning, when Bonnie arrived at Ron's lake house, her only source of information about Ron was Casey. On Friday afternoon, Casey called Bonnie to say she was going to her dad's cabin for the weekend. Ron will bring her home on Sunday evening. Bonnie realized that this was how her life would continue. She spent a miserable weekend thinking about how much she had screwed up her life. She had no idea how to correct her mistake, or even if it was possible to correct it. Has she completely ruined her once happy marriage? Returning home on Sunday evening, Casey looked rather gloomy. Dad decided to divorce you. He cannot live with someone who has lost all respect for him. I saw him cry several times this weekend. I've never seen this before in my entire life. Do you have any idea how much you offended him? Your boyfriend is probably a lot better than your dad. He's not my boyfriend and he's no match for your father, Bonnie replied, shocked. It was a huge mistake, and I deeply regret it. Your father is the best man I have ever known. Forgive both Dad and me for being skeptical, Casey replied. This isn't the first time you've slept with this bastard, right? You've been deceiving us for years, haven't you? Bonnie realized it was time to stop lying to her family. I slept with him at 2 conferences before this last one. It was wrong, and I apologize. Was it wrong? That's putting it mildly, don't you think, Mom? Casey objected angrily. You betrayed your father in the worst possible way. Didn't you vow to be faithful when you married him? Did you cross your fingers at that moment that it wouldn't count? I know you're upset with me, but not as much as I am. Your father is a wonderful man and a great father. You know it. What I did doesn't mean I think less of him. I acted very stupidly, Bonnie admitted sadly. As you say, Casey stated and went to her room. Jan with Bonnie returned to normal. She and Casey barely spoke to each other. Her life raft was her job. Everything there remained normal, except for Sue's cold attitude towards her. She went to Casey's school events, but usually sat alone unless her mom came with her. This was the only time she saw Ron. He always sat as far away from her as possible, and the other parents quickly noticed this. It soon became known that they were getting a divorce. Bonnie periodically heard fathers, both single and married, make lewd remarks and suggestions. It was quite obvious that the rumor of Bonnie's infidelity had spread throughout the community. Ron threw himself into his business. This was the silver lining of the whole fiasco. The irony was that Bonnie would get half the business. His lawyer suggested several tactics that could reduce Bonnie's share of the business, but Ron refused to listen. Bonnie worked next to me and even gave part of her salary to keep us afloat when we first took over the family business, Ron insisted. If it weren't for her, we would have nothing to share. I'm not going to deny the facts. Bonnie was very surprised when her lawyer explained to her how Ron was giving her half of his ownership of the business. A few years earlier, when Ron was going through a cash flow crisis, the company was bought by Ron's best friend, Dan. Dan was a silent partner who owned a third of the company. Having ceded half of their property to Bonnie, Ron found himself in a vulnerable position. He owned and controlled only a third of the business. Tell Ron this is too much, Bonnie insisted to her lawyer. He was the one who devoted all his time and energy to the business. If he insists on giving me a share, tell him that I agree to 1/10 of what we own. He will maintain control without possible disputes. Ron was nothing if not stubborn. When the snow melted the following spring, Bonnie became a single woman again and the third owner of Lipton Enterprises. She couldn't even convince Ron to talk to her on the phone. He completely cut her out of his life. Casey told Bonnie that she wanted to spend the summer between her junior and senior years of high school at a lake house with her father. Bonnie knew this was another attempt by Casey to punish her, but she accepted that she had earned her daughter's scorn. Ron, for his part, was delighted. He developed plans to almost double the size of the cabin. Owning a construction company, he easily completed the construction by the end of July. It was now a 3-bedroom lake house. Each bedroom had its own bathroom and a good view of the lake. It was a completely modernized and comfortable house. The first weekend in August, Ron hosted an open house for his friends and neighbors at the lake. All of Casey's friends were invited. One of them brought with her an older cousin, whom Ron couldn't help but notice. She had a striking blonde look that was complemented very well by a rather modest 2-piece swimsuit. During the day, Ron noticed that this girl was near him most of the time. She laughed at his jokes and flirted with him every chance she got. "Well, Dad, are you trying to get into a little bikini, Patty?" Casey asked one day when they were alone in the kitchen. "Of course not," Ron protested. "She can't be older than 25 and I haven't decided to start dating yet." "She's 27 and seems very interested in you," Casey replied with a knowing smile. "She asks how long you've been single, how old you are, what you do for a living, everything women want to know about potential husbands." "I just met her today," Ron replied. "Don't even think about mentioning the word marriage to me. I tried once and that was enough. I'm not hinting at anything other than that she seems interested. I wouldn't mind if you dated her. She's pretty sweet, and you need someone to help you forget your mom. From what I've seen, Patty is in no hurry to get married. I think she's working on her career now, but this does not mean that she doesn't like male communication. Thanks for enlightening me, Ron joked to his daughter. This girl is too attractive to be interested in an old guy like me. But thank you for your trust. I appreciate your faith in me. Bonnie's company occupied the top 2 floors of an office building in the business district. At the end of the same block was a very popular Italian bistro. She used to have lunch there every Thursday with a few of her friends from work. Because she kept an informal lunch schedule, she often saw the same people eating lunch at the same time. Bonnie and her co-workers became friends with employees of several other companies located in her building. One afternoon, the bistro was unusually crowded and Bonnie's group was unable to get a table. One of the employees at Benson Advertising, located on the 2nd floor of her building, invited her group to join them at a large table. They quickly accepted the invitation. After everyone said their first and last names as an introduction, the conversation began. One of the women on the advertising team was particularly attractive and very friendly. Bonnie found herself enjoying the young woman's good humor. She smiled as the other ladies began to tease the woman. "We don't all have a rich guy with a big house on Lake Henry," the woman Bonnie knew as Mary teased. "It must be nice to wake up with the morning sun reflecting off the lake." "Yes," the young woman agreed, "especially with a handsome guy who gently caresses me. Getting out of bed is such a hassle. If this is the guy who picked you up after work on Thursday, then I can see why it might be a problem," another woman said. "He looks a little older than you, but he seems to be in good shape. He has all the hair and is quite plain-looking." "Ron is all that and more," the young woman offered, smiling widely. "He's a really good guy and a really good lover." Bonnie's friend immediately asked the very question Bonnie didn't even want to consider. "You're not talking about Ron Lipton, are you?" "Do you know Ron?" asked the young beauty before adding, "You have to admit, he looks good." "He's a great guy, but he used to be Bonnie's husband," her colleague said. "I think we should change the subject." "Don't be so dramatic," Bonnie insisted, leaning toward the young woman and extending her hand. "I'm Bonnie Lipton. I didn't catch your name." "Patty Lawson. Ron said his ex-wife was beautiful, but I thought he was probably blinded by love," Patty admitted. "It turns out he didn't do you justice. I hope you won't be upset that I'm living with Ron now." "I certainly can't blame you, or him for that matter," Bonnie answered honestly. "You are a beautiful young woman with an amazing figure. I can easily understand why Ron liked you. I wonder why Casey never told me anything about you." "I can't speak for Casey, but I want to say that you raised your daughter well. She is very smart and attentive and also beautiful, just like her mother. I really like it when she visits us," Patty concluded. That evening, Bonnie questioned Casey while they were having dinner. "Why didn't you tell me that your father has a beautiful girlfriend who came to live with him? This is something that would interest me." "Honestly, Mom, I didn't mean to hurt your feelings." "I know how you feel about Dad," Casey replied. "I'm still upset that you cheated on him, but I don't want to make you unhappy because of your bad choices. Patty is actually good to Dad. He finally seems happy again. This may surprise you, but I'm glad to hear that Ron is happy. He's a wonderful person and deserves to be with a woman who loves him, even if it's not me. I don't think she directly loves Dad, but she really likes him. She made it clear that her career comes first for the next few years. I want to achieve great success in marketing. Aren't you going to start dating, Mom? Do you keep in touch with your boyfriend from conferences? Do you think you can get along with him?" Casey asked. "With Nick? He's not the person I would look for in a relationship," Bonnie admitted. "He is superficial, slightly rude, selfish, and vain. I never thought of it as anything more than entertainment. It turned out that he made my life hell. Although I knew what I was doing, I shouldn't blame him for my weakness." "Are you interested in anyone?" Casey asked. "You're still beautiful. I've noticed how some fathers and teachers look at you and go out of their way to be polite to you at school events. Honestly, I think Ron ruined me for other men," Bonnie replied with a sad smile. The reason for our divorce is known to most people in the area. It makes women sympathize with your father and men think of me as an easy target. It was probably easy for Nick, but I won't repeat that mistake again. I just don't understand how you could cheat on your father if you love him so much. Casey was surprised. He always treated you with love and respect. Something went wrong. I asked myself this question. Bonnie admitted. I think I've started to take your father for granted. I knew that he loved me, and I was very confident in this love. This somehow resulted in attempts to try another man, maybe because I knew that I had a reliable back at home. Ron was my anchor. He was always there for me. I foolishly believed that he would always be there. I could have gone a little astray, and he would not have known about it, and still my devoted husband would have been at home. I pray that you find a man like Ron when you are ready to start a family, and use my experience as a cautionary tale. Never take more than you give in a relationship. Be faithful, dedicated, and honest. If you are thinking about something that could harm your relationship, discuss it with your husband. I showed you what happens when you lie and cheat. Sometimes Bonnie would run into Patty during lunch. She was surprised by how much she liked this woman. She also felt embarrassed that she was anxiously awaiting any news regarding Ron. Casey didn't want to tell Bonnie too much about her father. As his daughter, she could not be privy to some of the more personal aspects of his life. Patty willingly discussed Ron with her friends. Bonnie, it's obvious that you still love Ron, Patty remarked one day, while the two women were having lunch. He never says anything bad about you, but it's obvious that you offended him greatly. I'm not here to judge you, but I have to say that I would never cheat if I was in a relationship. I find it hard to believe you did this. Everything I see and hear from you says that you love and respect him. I would encourage you to remember this when the flame of passion fades and you are caught up in everyday life, Bonnie replied. I lost my way and paid for it. Love isn't always about wild sex and great vacations. Sometimes it's trying to decide when to pump out the septic tank or what color to paint the house. Everything becomes ordinary, but that's normal. Ron is an honest businessman, a caring, loyal friend, and a great father. I will always love him, but I betrayed him in the worst way a wife can. I learned my lesson. Perhaps I woke up too late. I told Ron last night that I was accepting a position in Seattle and would be leaving in 2 weeks. This is a great opportunity for me. I told him from the beginning that I put my career first, but I see that my news upset him, Patty said. I'm telling you this so you know what he's going through and maybe help him if he gets depressed. He's a really great guy. He's just not my forever boyfriend. I'm sure he will miss you very much. Ron doesn't do anything on a whim. If he invited you to live with him, it means he has a very high opinion of you as a person, in addition to your beauty. At the same time, he is a strong person. I tested his strength, but he survived. He's really improved. Bonnie started with a small smile. He'll miss you, but he's a great catch, and I doubt his bed will be empty for very long. Yes, that's why I give you the information first, Patty replied with a smile of her own. What you do with it depends only on you. Only a week had passed when Ron's best friend and secret partner, Dan, asked Bonnie to meet him for lunch at the bistro. The room was crowded, but they found a small table to the side. After the usual greetings and formalities, Dan explained the reason for his request for a meeting. You know that piece of land that Ron bought on Route 21 near the river? I have a buyer willing to pay almost $2 million for it. Ron bought it for next to nothing. The profit will be huge. Your third will be more than $500,000. Ron said that this land can be bought, and someday it will be very expensive. Is he going to sell it? Bonnie asked, wondering how she was participating in the discussion. That's the problem, Dan replied. He says he thinks the company will get more benefit if they offer it for a long-term lease. He would like the contract to stipulate that his company will build what the tenant needs for his business. That sounds like Ron, Bonnie admitted with a smile, thinking about how businesslike and smart he was. I'm sure he's done the math, and his plan will be more profitable in the long run. What is the problem? I think we need to make a quick profit by selling the land. Planning 10 to 15 years ahead is great, but I'd like to get the money now. You own a third of the company, I own a third. Together we could insist that Ron accept the offer and then pay us our share of the profits. Ron won't get hurt. Hell, he'll get $500,000 in cash to calm any ruffled feathers. Bonnie felt her anger rising as she listened to Dan make his proposal. Are you asking me to betray Ron's trust? You think money means more to me than Ron's ruffled feathers, as you call it? Let me tell you something. Ron would take this as a complete and utter betrayal by his wife and best friend. This is the worst thing you could do for him. Worse than his wife having sex with some young guy at a conference? Teased Dan. You're his ex-wife for a reason. You've already betrayed him. He divorced your cheating ass. This is a chance to get a little revenge and at the same time get a good amount of money, Dan reasoned. This shit about a faithful wife won't fly. We both know that description doesn't suit you. I betrayed Ron and I admit it, Bonnie replied in suppressed rage. I was stupid and selfish, but I never wanted to hurt him. He's better than both of us and deserves much better business partners than both of us will ever be. That's why I will never betray him again. I'd rather lose my last penny than hurt Ron like that. I proved that I was a lousy wife, and you just proved that you are a bad friend and partner. Ron will control my share of the company as long as I breathe. In fact, I'll be making a new will to make sure Ron gets my share after I die. You should know better than to doubt his business skills. Bonnie started angrily, standing up and placing a bill on the table to cover her half-eaten lunch. Then she looked into Dan's eyes. Please don't try to steal this too. Almost a month later, Bonnie opened the door and saw Ron standing on the porch. She was very surprised. Ron had studiously avoided her since the morning she returned from the ill-fated conference. Ron, come in. Everything is fine? Casey left a few minutes ago if you're looking for her, Bonnie said, surprised at how excited she was about Ron's presence right now. I'm here to talk if you have time, Ron began, entering the house that had been his for over 15 years. Can you give me a few minutes? If you're busy, I'll try another time. I'm not busy, Bonnie answered quickly, and I just made coffee. Why don't we sit in the kitchen? I appreciate you taking me in so quickly, Ron said, picking up his coffee mug. You always made excellent coffee. When we first got married, I didn't even know how to cook it, Bonnie answered with a grin. It took me a while to get it right. I didn't marry you for the coffee, Ron countered. You had other attributes that I found much more attractive. I've never heard you call them attributes, Bonnie said, still smiling, but I heard you call them Smith & Wesson several times. Yeah, you brought out the big guns and I was powerless to resist you, Ron admitted. Patty must have you wrapped around her finger or some part of her body, Bonnie said. There's some serious heat coming from her. I appreciate how well you treated Patty. She thinks you're a wonderful person. Her opinion of you is one of the reasons why I'm here. A couple of weeks ago, one of her friends overheard your conversation with Dan over lunch. Patty talked about this before heading to the West Coast. She thinks your dedication and honesty have been exceptional. I have to agree. After the way I treated you in the divorce, you still flatly rejected Dan. Many women whose husbands divorced him so quickly would want to take revenge or at least repay. I would never do that to you, Ron. I know how hard you work on your projects and how much they mean to you. I also know that you will make sure that this land brings in much more income than Dan is looking for. He's a fool to doubt you, Bonnie concluded. I appreciate your vote of confidence. Patty helped me accept the fact that you were my partner, even though I ran the business as if it were all mine. I have to give you the opportunity to express your opinion and say what you want to do, said Ron. If you want to sell this property and split the profits, I will agree. Dan is trying to convince me to sell it, Ron said. I think he doesn't have enough money. He believes that if we sell this land, then each of us will be able to get $500,000 out of business without infringing on him. Would you like this too? I think you probably have plans for this property that will bring good profits to the company and goodwill from the community, Bonnie replied with obvious pride. You were never looking for a quick profit. I always wanted to improve the area and make good money at the same time. You have something planned for this area, right? I was negotiating a long-term lease with General Hospital to build an emergency care complex on this site, Ron admitted. It won't be as profitable as the luxury condominium project Dan's company is pushing to build, but it will still make a good profit, and we'll have a contract to build it. This will create jobs as well as goodwill. I guessed it would be something like this, Bonnie answered, a little smugly. You are a good businessman, but you also invest in society. That's what sets you apart from people like Dan. Dan thinks it's better to make a quick profit. I don't agree with this line of thinking. As far as I understand, he came to you to propose his idea, and you refused him. I trust you unconditionally, Ron. You never gave me a reason not to trust myself. I will support your business decisions until the end, Bonnie promised. It probably sounds strange when you already know you can't trust me, but it's true. I was thinking about how Dan is trying to interfere with your business. It occurred to me that we should buy him back. If he doesn't have the money, he'll probably listen to a reasonable offer. He will be happy, and you will be able to run your business as you see fit. Bonnie reasoned. I've thought about it, but I don't have the capital to make it happen, Ron agreed. We could sell this house, Bonnie suggested. I can get a nice 2-bedroom apartment for Casey and me. Over the years, we have accumulated a lot of capital. The house is almost paid for, and you've made some major improvements. This will be enough for us to buy out Dan's share. Now that we're divorced, this is your home. Are you ready to sell it and invest money in business? Ron asked incredulously. I don't know how soon I'll close the deal on the urgent care center. I cannot guarantee that you will get your money back anytime soon, or even that you will get it at all. Do I look worried? Bonnie joked. Don't forget that I was married to you for 20 years. You will get everything back with interest. If for some reason you don't do this, it's okay. I owe you one, Ron. Money will never make up for my disrespect, but it will get you away from Dan. I'll agree to this if you come and live in the house by the lake with me and Casey, Ron said, and then quickly added, you will have your own room with a bathroom. It turned out very nice. I don't think this will work, Bonnie answered sadly. It's a matter of personal life, not to mention dating and all the drama that will create for you. Sorry, I didn't think about your social life. Ron apologized. Of course, you wouldn't want to bring a gentleman into the house when your ex-husband lives there, especially that guy, Nick. It would be awkward. I don't go on dates and I don't plan on starting, Bonnie replied. I stopped going to conferences and haven't spoken to Nick since that disastrous trip. It is you who will experience the inconvenience. No woman wants to spend the night with you when your ex is sleeping in the next room. If I'm around, it will be extremely unlikely that you will find a woman who will agree to move in with you, although I do not rule out the possibility. I've seen women fall in love with you. I divorced you because you slept with that guy, and then I moved Patty in with me. My behavior wasn't the best example for Casey, was it? Ron asked rhetorically. My only excuse is that I was depressed and lonely. Another man took my wife away from me, and my self-confidence was pretty low. Patty was able to restore it for me. I'm sorry I damaged your self-esteem. I wish this had never happened, but I don't blame you for falling for Patty. She is a wonderful woman. You are a single man and can enter into any relationship you want, Bonnie said, and added, I don't think I've ever apologized properly for my behavior. It was not something you caused or created. This is all on my conscience. I truly screwed up, and I am truly sorry for the pain and inconvenience I caused. You really hurt me, Bonnie. I've never been unfaithful. Lived for you and Casey. I went from having everything to feeling like a complete failure, Ron admitted. Patty helped me understand that while I may not have been the perfect husband, I wasn't the reason you cheated. You could have told me that you are not happy with our marriage or our sex life or anything. I would have tried to do better if I had known. I was just stupid, Ron, not unhappy. You were a very good husband, a great father to Casey, and a great lover, Bonnie said. I have lost my way and deserve to be unhappy. It sounds strange, but being unhappy makes me happy. I feel like I'm paying for my sins. Maybe you'll at least come and look at the house by the lake, asked Ron. I would like to show it and get your opinion. I took some of the ideas we've discussed all these years into the rebuild. I think you'll approve. Casey has a volleyball match in 2 hours. Can I take advantage of this offer another time? Bonnie asked. Let's look at him before the match. We can go there together, Ron suggested, and then I'll drop you here. Aren't you afraid that people will think we're back together if we go as a couple? You usually sit as far away from me as possible, Bonnie noted. Yeah, I was a bit of an ass, but in my defense, you fucked me and our marriage. You couldn't expect me to be cordial to you, Ron reasoned. Actually, you were much kinder to me than I would have been to you if things had been the other way around, Bonnie admitted. Your settlement offer was too generous. We both know it. Looks like that kindness is paying off, Ron grumbled. We're thinking of selling the house to buy out Dan's share. I still find it hard to believe that you are ready to do this. Honestly, Ron, you can take anything of mine that you want. You have always been honest with me. I know that you will not harm me, although I deserve it. Let me show you the lake house, Ron suggested, to change the subject and give himself time to calm his emotions. While Ron showed the house, Bonnie admired the renovation. You really did a great job. Casey's room is very large and she has her own bathroom. This is the dream of every teenage girl. When Ron showed Bonnie the second bedroom, Bonnie felt it was time to talk about the elephant in the room. It's a lovely room with another amazing bathroom, but I can't stay here, Ron. It will be too painful for me to see you every day and remember what I've lost. We will sell the house and I will rent an apartment. I'll be fine. We have to leave soon for Casey's match. Let me show you the master bedroom, Ron urged. She's bigger than the rest. I know you'll like it. She's beautiful. You did a great job, as always, Bonnie praised, looking around the bedroom. That's why your business is so successful. You have an eye for detail. Would you stay with me and Casey if you had this room? Ron asked sharply. I would still see you every day and I don't think I could stand it, Bonnie answered sadly. I didn't mean that she would be yours alone, Ron explained nervously. I thought maybe we could share it. Bonnie raised her eyebrows, studying Ron's face. Are you asking me to share your bed? Ever since the day I found out you cheated and I left home, I've felt like crap. I miss you so much that sometimes it hurts. You screwed up big time, but I slept with Patty for months. This softened your betrayal a little, but did not get rid of it. I wonder if we can get over all this crap and try to be together again. I don't want to be your prey, Bonnie answered firmly. If you want to punish me even more, I won't do it. If I move in with you, I will be completely faithful and expect the same from you. No more young beauties in your bed. It will be just me there, or I will be gone in an instant. I have worked hard to regain my self-respect, and I intend to maintain it. I love you, Ron, but you have to be completely on board, or I'm leaving. No one was more surprised than Casey when her parents walked into the gym arm in arm. She hurried to them to talk to them without anyone hearing. Mother? Dad? Does it mean that? Casey began, but Ron smiled and nodded before she could finish her question. Casey hugged her mother and held her close as she spoke into her ear. Welcome home, Mom. I love you, but don't ever cheat on your dad again. I have a friend with a single aunt who is even more beautiful than Patty. Subscribe to our channel so that your second chaff doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think about listening to the next one.